So me and a bunch of other Overwatch content creators got to play the Overwatch 2 Alpha alongside the pros, and we couldn't talk about it until right now because of an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement that basically meant that Blizzard would sue our asses off if we talked about anything that we saw or played until now. The NDA is over, and I'm here to tell you guys what I thought about the Overwatch 2 that I got to play. So before we get right into the meat of it, there's one thing the developers I'm sure would want me to clarify, which is that again, this was an alpha version, which means it's pretty far away from the final product. It's not ready, everything is not the way it's going to be at the final version, including, for example, Sojourn, who was very broken when we first got our hands on her at the first version of the alpha, and they actually patched her later to be a lot more fair, and that's something I'll talk about in a minute. But that's one example of how things can and will change from the alpha. Even the things that we see and we've seen and I'm going to talk about now may be different when it comes to the beta. Now on that note, there's one thing that's not going to change, and that's 5v5. So I know that's one thing that everyone's very curious about. Everyone really wants to know, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? So this is my thoughts on 5v5. Obviously, I've been a proponent of it anyways, but I can tell you guys that for me, it felt good. It felt really good. Like everything about Overwatch 2, I'm actually very excited to share with you guys. And I know a bunch of other content creators are as well, so you're going to see a lot of footage released today. But I really enjoyed the game, and I think this is a great direction for the game. Now, speaking of 5v5, a lot of people have already said that, you know, it feels more deathmatchy, it feels more brawly, and that's 100% true. I can tell you that having played it, that the game does feel like that. It feels a bit more open, and it's going to feel a little bit weird when you start as well. When you get your hands on Overwatch 2 and it's 5v5, it's going to feel a little bit weird because we've been used to for years playing a 6v6 version of the game. So we're kind of conceptually, we're used to certain spots having certain numbers of people. So especially on the classic Overwatch maps, it's going to feel weird having one less player there because you just feel like there should be one more giant tank occupying space and kind of annoying you. But in general, the game did feel more deathmatchy. It felt more action-packed. It felt like stuff was going on a lot of the time, and it felt like, and this is maybe my bias, but it felt to me like I had a greater impact in all those games. It felt like at any point I could clutch a lot harder, I could do a lot more, for two reasons. Firstly, there's just straight up less people in the lobby, which means that me as an individual, I have more power. I only have to kill 5 people instead of 6, right? But on top of that, I think the lack of that extra tank really did make it feel like you could do a lot more, because obviously we know tanks do a lot of damage mitigation, they do a lot of protection for their team. Now, some of you are going to say, well, that's scary for me because I want that protection. But I think as a player overall, I'd rather the ability to do something myself than have to rely on someone else to protect me. So I really preferred having this ability to kind of flank more, go get picks, go clutch fights a lot more. There was a lot less things to stop me from clutching fights, it felt like. And this also leans into the lack of CCs, the crowd controls that have been taken away a lot. All of that felt really good. So I'll go more into that in detail, but there's another thing that I want to talk about, which is that all of this is with a pinch of salt because we didn't actually have a competitive mode in the alpha. Obviously, there were such few people there, it wouldn't even have made sense to have a competitive mode. But the quick play matchmaking was pretty wild because one game you could be up against like gold developers, and then the next game there's the Who Are You Doomfist tank pounding you in the backline. And I definitely got farmed a few times by some Overwatch League pros. So it's kind of difficult to say exactly what it would feel like in a competitive environment. Maybe when people grind it the way they have done Overwatch 1, it would feel a lot different. But at least in the quick play format, it felt really great. And we did get to organize a set of pugs amongst the creators, and these were really good. Because another one of the minor problems was that there wasn't that many people from EU there, and I'm an EU content creator. So if I tried to queue up in the daytime for EU, I'd probably get dragged to the Korean servers on like 300 ping. And in the evenings, I obviously still had to play on ping in the NA server. So there wasn't a lot of games happening in EU, which was a bit of a problem. But we did amongst ourselves, the European content creators, organize some pugs. And this was a really high quality game. I had so much fun in these. Again, 5v5 just felt more dynamic. It felt like more was going on and I was capable of doing more. So for example, I played a lot of Reinhardt in these pugs. And Reinhardt is objectively one of the worst tanks in Overwatch 2. He's one of the worst tanks right now. And before I go any further, let me just talk about that for a second, because this is the fact that there's now two essentially new tanks. There's the new Orisa and the new tank Doomfist. Now, having played Reinhardt, those of you guys who are interested in our old German boy, he definitely doesn't match up well against either of those two. Because basically Orisa has like 3 abilities to kite Reinhardt. So she can javelin him and push him back, right? If he tries to swing on her, she throws the javelin, impales him back. She can fortify, which means she gets extra health and takes way less damage from his swings. And she can do the spinny deflect thing, which also blocks his melees and does damage to him and pushes him back. So the Reinhardt versus Orisa matchup is really bad. And the Doomfist matchup versus Reinhardt isn't great either, because basically his punch is on a pretty short cooldown, much shorter than pin. So essentially you can kind of counter pin one of every other one of his punches. So if he just stands there and just keeps punching you over and over, it feels a bit like the kid game where you're like, why are you hitting yourself? Why are you hitting yourself? So it's a little bit frustrating. But despite that, so this is what I found really interesting about 5v5. Despite having a bad matchup, I still felt like I could do a lot. When we were playing those pugs, when I wasn't getting pounded by the other tank, I was basically carrying the game. Because the cool thing is that the tanks just generally feel more powerful, but because there's only one now, it doesn't feel their presence is super oppressive, right? They're only in one spot. So if you don't want to deal with that tank, you can run away from that tank. And on the tank side of things, you're kind of free to go and do more crazy shit. Like, I had to get pretty creative with the Reinhardt. You know, I'm deep in the back line, pinning my way there, canceling it, 2 fire strikes, solo slamming people, just pounding away. And it felt like a lot of fun. It felt like I was able to clutch fights over and over in a way that in Overwatch 1, it doesn't feel like that. Because in Overwatch 1, matchups feel a lot more important. So again, take the Reinhardt example. I've played Reinhardt for years, and sometimes you get into a lobby and it just feels like what the enemy team has picked is an instant loss for you. And I know there's a lot of heroes that feel like this, especially tank heroes, like characters like Winston as well feel like this, where it's like, oh, they picked Reaper, Torb, Ana Sleep, Cassidy's gonna flash you or whatever, and the Hog is gonna destroy you, and there's this other protection here as well. Whereas in Overwatch 2, it felt a bit more free. Now obviously, we're not try-hard sweating, we don't know all the compositions intimately yet in Overwatch 2, so maybe that will change, but at least from what I played, it didn't feel like there was a certain thing you could assemble and now this is just going to destroy you. Even playing Reinhardt, even getting hard focused at times, it didn't feel so bad, and this comes down to the lack of crowd control as well, right? Because another one of the things that really stops you from playing the current game of Overwatch is the constant crowd control. It's the feeling that like half of every character has a massive crowd control. But I think what the developers did a really good job of in Overwatch 2 is that essentially now almost all the crowd control is only on tanks, and then we got like the odd Ana Sleep Dart or Junkrat Trap or something that's not really hugely oppressive. So again, as long as you play around dodging that one big tank, and again we'll talk about the philosophy shift of how you should play probably Overwatch 2 different, and I'll probably talk about that in detail in a different video. But again, if you want to have impact, you can kind of do your best to dodge that one tank, and then you've kind of dodged all the crowd control as well, so there's nothing really that's going to like straight up stop you with just an ability push. So it felt really good. It felt really good. It felt really impactful. And I felt like I could do a lot. So I really enjoyed that part of it. And I think the developers have made a really nice philosophy shift. And I think we're going to see this in Overwatch 2 from what I could gather, where the game is a lot more about making plays for yourself. And I think particularly in the Overwatch 2 maps that you're going to see, the New Queen Street Toronto map, the Midtown New York map, Monaco map, the Rome map, all these maps are really fun. I think they're really going to emphasize that playstyle of like, go get kills, go do fun stuff. There's not too much to stop you, but there's a lot of flank angles, there's a lot of cover, and they added a lot of cover to the old maps as well. Like you'll see when you get to play them, you know, on Dorado, for example, they've added like a little nook of cover right outside the spawn door, because otherwise sometimes you can get spammed from the high ground. So little details like that lets me know the developers have really shifted the philosophy of Overwatch away from this idea of kind of death balling and spamming from a distance into more of a game that feels like it's an FPS. It's there for you to make plays essentially. Now I know some of you are big fans of the heavily tactical side of Overwatch, right? The 6v6 element, coordinate, play together, use your abilities together, and that will still be there to some extent. Of course that will still be there. But I definitely think Overwatch 2 is going to be a much better solo queue experience, and I think we've all gotten sick of the Overwatch 1 solo queue experience by now. So speaking of philosophy, yeah, Doomfist tank, Orisa tank, they both feel really good. Like Orisa feels really fun now, and Doomfist feels so right as a tank actually. I myself was a bit like, why are they making Doomfist a tank? Like, it just feels like they're doing it an easy way out. But actually having seen him played, having played him myself, he actually feels so right as a tank. Like even from a lore POV, doesn't make sense that this badass boss of Talon is like some little lurking loser who hides around corners waiting to kind of pounce from nowhere. It feels so right that he just gets there in the front line. He does his little block thing, which feels really cool. His new punch feels really cool. All the sounds and stuff in the game as well actually feel really nice. They've redone a lot of the sounds. They've redone a lot of the visuals. I really like him. Maybe you think I'm a shill VB. I'm biased. I'm just out here paid by Blizzard. But genuinely, disclaimer, my own opinions, I really enjoyed the sound, I really enjoyed the visuals, and I really enjoyed the feel of both Orisa and Doomfist. And on that note, I also thought they did a great job with Sojourn. Now we've already seen some little bits of her, and you guys are going to get to see lots of more of her. I'm sure already the internet has been flooded with Sojourn gameplay, and she's a really fun new hero. You guys are really going to like her. What's great about her is that she feels fun, she feels dynamic, she has this jump slide thing which lets her run around the map really fast. Her gun feels really good to shoot, and on top of that, to really get value from her, you do have to be actually good. She's not one of the new heroes that just has a lot more than all the other ones, where you can look at something like a Sigma or a Baptiste, and yes, these are not easy heroes, but there are abilities that you can just kind of push and press that do a lot automatically. Sojourn is not like that at all. Like, her gun requires a lot of aim, and especially the railgun, even though it's very powerful, it's very difficult to land. Like, I tried her a few times, and there are times when you start hitting those shots and you feel like a god. You're just like, oh my goodness, I just wrecked like 3 people with her ultimate. Because basically the way her ultimate works is it overclocks her railgun. So let's say like every 2 seconds you can hit a right click, and it can basically one tap people if you headshot them. But that's the tricky part, headshotting them while they're running around moving so fast. And it feels really great when you land those shots and you feel rewarded for hitting them. But when you don't hit them, you'll just be there like, wow, this is awful. Like, I'm really bad. This hero isn't really great. So that, I think, is a great philosophy going forwards, that heroes should feel both powerful or not so powerful, depending on how you execute them. So if Sojourn is anything to go by for how new heroes will look in Overwatch 2, we're going to be very, very happy. I think we can avoid, I hope, any more Brigitte-esque disasters. And like I mentioned at the start of the video, one really cool thing was that they changed Sojourn in the alpha itself. So when we first got our hands on her, she was pretty busted. Like, she was way stronger than she will probably be when the beta begins. It was actually really cool the developers listened to us very quickly. Like, they dropped many patches in the alpha itself. Like, the alpha didn't last long, and they dropped many patches within the alpha, which was such a weird feeling and an amazing feeling as an Overwatch player, because we're used to like one patch a year now at this point. But getting like multiple patches in the space of like, one a week was incredible. Now, obviously, it was a much smaller sample size, right? So the developers were listening to us a lot more, but it felt amazing because we would give some feedback. We'd be like, nah, this thing is too strong, this thing is too weak. And they listened. They listened, they changed it, and it felt much better. You'd be like, oh yeah, no, that feels good now. That feels much better now. Like, maybe we've just been traumatized and we've been forced to get used to a very low standard, but it felt really great to feel listened to feel like the devs were actively working on their game, and to feel like there was new changes happening. Even though we had new maps and a new hero, it felt like a living, breathing game again. And I really, really look forward to that feeling when Overwatch 2 beta comes out and when all the new heroes and stuff start coming out slowly, to feel like we're in a living, breathing game again. Because a lot of times we forget that as Overwatch 1 players. The game feels so stale, we've just kind of gotten used to it. But again, if the developers can do what they did in the alpha period, which is to actually listen to the feedback, patch quickly, give us new stuff all the time, it's going to be amazing, guys. It's going to be a whole new world of Overwatch. And on a similar note, I actually want to mention really quickly what it felt like playing in the alpha, just in terms of the community. Because another real problem point that I know a lot of people have stopped playing Overwatch 4 or don't enjoy Overwatch as much as they once used to is because of the community, honestly. Like, the community feels really stale. Again, I can't remember the last time I spoke to someone about currently playing Overwatch and they weren't like, yeah, levers, throwers everywhere, people being really toxic, people being really obnoxious. And it just takes the fun away from what's supposed to be this really wholesome team game. And I actually cannot begin to describe to you guys how amazing the community aspect felt in the alpha. Now, I'm not trying to FOMO you guys here, I promise. I'm not trying to do this to make you guys jealous. But I just want to emphasize to you, like, imagine you queue up for a game and everyone in the lobby is really nice. Because that's what it was every single game in the alpha. Because we knew the only people who'd been let in were people who were within good standing in the community, right? So it was actually an incredible feeling to kind of queue into the game, and every game you pop into, it's like, oh, there's a bunch of your friends here, right? There's either people you've heard of, seen, or people you actually are friends with. You've played with them and you're like, oh, I know that guy, they're great, yeah. Hey, how you doing? Let's play. Like, oh, nice move, GG, good shot. Like, an actual community that was nice to each other, like, was a completely different feeling of playing the game. Like, everyone was laughing, everyone was having a good time with each other. Like, there was a bit of memeing, a lot of respect between the two teams. Like, it just showed me that Overwatch could be such an amazing game if we didn't have such a garbage community sometimes. So what I really hope, at least in the beta and then going forwards, is that we can't get rid of all the bad people, right? Obviously, the alpha is a very unique example where we've hand selected who can play and who can't. What I would really love to see going forwards is that breath of fresh air in the community, the feeling amongst the community that isn't staleness, that isn't bitterness, that isn't anger already when the lobby starts, It's people excited to play the game. And maybe if we had a more strict banning system where we were able to police people a little bit harder, we could have something closer to that level of a community where it really feels like everyone is playing with a smile on their face. And that is an amazing feeling. So I'm really excited, guys. Like, the taste I got of Overwatch 2 was amazing. I didn't get to play as much as I wanted to because I still had to stream in the evenings and I had a day job as well. So I didn't get to queue up anywhere near as much as I wanted to. But I'm so excited for the alpha. I'm so excited for you guys to play. Like, I am genuinely, I'm not BSing you guys. I'm so excited for you guys to get your hands on Overwatch 2. I hope as many of you watching this video as possible get in, and get in as quickly as possible, as early into the beta phases as possible. Because I think most of you guys are going to feel what I feel. You're going to feel very excited to play this fun, new, dynamic game. To be, you know, just viscerally happy. We're getting new stuff, new heroes, fun new maps to play on. On that note, I'm going to be releasing a lot of map guides over the coming days. So every day from now on, I'm going to release a map guide for the new map. So I'm not going to talk about them too much right now. If you're interested, stay subscribed, like, and all that BS. You know how it goes with the algorithm. And catch me in the subsequent days when we'll be talking about all the 4 new maps. And it just feels really great to feel like this game that I've loved for so long, this game that I've loved for 6 years, poured my life into, it's alive again, right? Again, you don't really appreciate what the current state of it is until you get this comparison, because the current state is so stale, it's so kind of neglected, that to get this other version where, like I said, things are actively happening, things are actively changing, we're getting new stuff, exciting new feelings, exciting new changes, all of that is just exactly what we've asked for this entire time. So whether you are on the fence of 5v5 or not, I think you're going to enjoy a lot of the extraneous elements of Overwatch 2. You're going to enjoy the sound, you're going to enjoy the visuals, you're going to enjoy the feeling of playing Sojourn, you're going to enjoy these new maps. So I hope you guys are excited, and stay tuned because this really feels like this is the start of a new world, guys. This is the start of a new beginning for Overwatch, and hopefully we can get it right this time. But that's it from me for this video. Like I said, I'm going to be releasing a lot more content now that we have a lot more content. So stay looking out for map guides. I'm going to put out a tier list as well of what heroes are strong and what heroes are not strong going into the beta. And as the beta begins, we're going to release a lot more content, whatever you guys want actually. So I really want you, those of you who get in, or maybe even before we get into the beta, if there's anything you want to understand or know about Overwatch 2, drop it in the comment section and I will do my best to try and make a video about it. Because I really want to do what I used to do a lot in Overwatch 1, which was make content that people didn't have elsewhere. You know, make guides that I felt like people didn't have access to before, that these guides didn't exist. So I want to go back to doing that. I want to go back to making content, not out of thin air. So if there's something you want to see, drop in the comment section. Come on to my stream where I'll be streaming 5 days a week, every day except Tuesday and Saturday. I'm streaming. So hop on down, tell me what you think, tell me what you want to know. And as always, I want to give a big shout out to my patrons who do the awesome job of supporting me. And if you want to support me directly, then do follow the link in the video description and consider signing up. Oh, and one final plug while we're in the plug zone. I know half of you have turned off by now, but if you do get into the beta, I'm going to be hosting Overwatch 2 pugs on my server. And even if you don't get into the beta, we're going to be hosting a lot of fun events on there. So check the video description again, the link to my Discord server. We're going to host a lot of fun events going forwards there. So make sure you join. And I hope to see you guys there in the beta, in the comment section, in the videos. And I hope to see you guys happy, excited, and thriving like Overwatch 2. See you soon.